Right guys, this video we're going to be talking about my hybrid radio setup. Now I've been running with this setup for about 8 months now, and I have to say, first of all, thanks to Rolands HB9VQQ, because if it wasn't for him and his research that he's shared, I wouldn't be doing this today. Now before I get started, I want to just share a quick analogy, and this is something that I did way back. Now these days we've all got smartphones. Everyone I know uses a touchscreen phone, but I remember when touchscreen phones were coming out and I didn't want to change to one. I liked my phone with the buttons. I just didn't want a touchscreen phone, but eventually I'm kind of forced into it, and once I was forced into it, I really didn't look back. So what I'm going to show you in this video, I think, is a little bit of the same. Now we're talking, when I say hybrid, what do I actually mean? Well, I'm actually using a separate receiver and a separate transmitter, so not an all-in-one transceiver like we would traditionally use as amateur radio operators. And the main reason for actually doing that is for out-and-out receiver performance, and I'm going to show you some data that Rolands compiled, and I'm going to show you a little bit of my own data, because there are going to be some of you that are skeptics out there, because the long and the short of it is, some of you will simply not believe that you could buy a receiver that costs $200 and then compare that to a radio that then costs $3,000. Okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to show you the setup first. So I've got my screen's actually recording, and we're in the headphones, so I'm going to be able to hear what you're hearing, and I'm not going to get audio coming from different places, so it's just to keep the audio cleaner. So now you can see my screen here. So the first thing I'm going to do, now this, you wouldn't actually need this software for doing this, but I'm using a piece of software called VoiceMeeter Potato, and it's basically an audio routing program, and I use it because I use OBS, but for the normal run-of-the-mill of things, you wouldn't need this, and I've got different things set up here, basically just to route audio, and it helps me share that audio with you. I need a comm splitter, so the radio that I'm using is a Kenwood, the TRX, but just for TX, is a Kenwood TS590 Sugar. Now I bought this radio new in 2011, and I think even to this day it's still a great standalone receiver. But this is one of the earlier radios that had USB connectivity built in, so you just get a, for USB over serial, so you can get rig control. You could even get you can get your audio over it as well. So I actually need to take the COM port, which on my computer is COM3, and I'm going to split that and put it into COM10. So I'm going to use virtual serial port splitter. So I'm just going to do that, and I've got it all set up to split already. I'm going to start up my logging software, which is N2EME, and then I'm going to start the software SDR Console. So this is the software for my SDR receiver. Now, normal running of the things, I can actually set this up in about 15 seconds, and that's up and running. So it's not a time-consuming thing once it's up and running. But for your benefit, you can see that I've got a choice here. And the radio that I'm going to be using here, which is my favourite, which is the Airspy HF Plus Discovery, but I also have SDRPlay, RSPDX, and I'm going to show you some data. So it's your choice which radio that you would like to use. So I'm just going to select the Airspy, hit start. Now my TS590 is already running, so SDR Console has a great feature that we can actually just connect the radios together, and that's used by a piece of software called Omnirig. And with my radio just turned on here, I'm actually just going to turn it, and there it goes. That's us synced. Now, I've got the mute turned on. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to try and find a station first. I'll just take the mute off. So now you should be hearing some audio there. So I'm using my radio to then control SDR Console. Now you can set your bandwidth to what you want to see. You can see the whole band if you want. So I could then use the software, just click here. It changes the frequency on the transceiver as well. There you go. Click again.
I have an aversion to bowing planes.
Okay.
So I steer clear.
Here's somebody that's quite wide. On 317. Now, this piece of software, I'll just put it back to mute for a minute. You can do so much with this software. It's your rig that's all in one, and it's actually a free piece of software that you can download and run. It's just absolutely wonderful. You've got your modes on the side now. It will track with your radio, so when you change modes, it will change this. The filtering is outstanding, and it's totally customizable. You can set as many of these filters up as you actually want. You've got your AGC. You've got some noise reduction there that you can put on if you want. It really is simple, but we're just going to. I'm just want to move away from this for a second, and we'll leave that. Actually, we'll leave it running on mute. So, what do we actually need to do to actually get this running? If I move this across, so I guess at the heart of it all, we have this switch. This is the SDR switch by Paul, N2EME. Now, this is an interface which allows you to hook up your SDR and your transceiver. Now, Paul is an EME guy. You see that in his call sign, and he is OCD would be the word, pedantic about loss. So there's a lot of these SDR switches, a lot of cheap ones on popular marketplaces. I wouldn't, just don't buy them. This is the thing that I would recommend you to buy. And for what it is, I don't think it is a lot of money. At the time of this, it's about £140, so that's maybe $160, something like that. And Paul keeps stock in the UK, EU. So what basically, yeah, the EU, UK, and in the States. So you can ship locally wherever you are effectively. Insertion loss is incredible. If we're looking at this point, 001 dB at 80 meters, even at 6 meters, 0.057, it's absolutely nothing. Now, Paul actually provides some block diagrams. Again, I'll put links to this all down in the description. So I've got my my Airspy plugged into one side of this, which would go into the RX. I've got my TS590 plugged into the TX, and then I've got my antenna, which is a doublet that I'm running at the minute here. So that same antenna is used for receiving and transmitting. Now, you could, with this SDR switch, you could run a dedicated receive antenna, and then so your receive antenna would go into the antenna, and then your transceiver, you would just connect your TX antenna to that, so you could have a split antennas that way. On the other side, you need to power it with 12 volts. You need a PTT line, so it basically grounds the unit. And that's critically important, because if you didn't do that, you would then blow the front end of your SDR receiver. So this is really the main purpose of this, is to basically save your SDR receiver. Looking at the SDR receivers itself, what I like about the Airspy website is they actually give you a lot of specs, and for a receiver that costs $200 I find the specs absolutely incredible. When you look at the sensitivity and the dynamic range, you wouldn't believe that this little 30 gram box can actually do all this. And Roland, he actually did the comparisons comparing to his Flex 6600. So that's what he's actually shown here on his groups.io. Again, I'll link this down in the description. Right, so what I'm actually showing here is Roland's data that he ran. So he's actually run this for 3 complete days. So this is on, I believe that, yeah, this is 40 meters. So what he's done is he's got two. He's got his 2 radios, so he's got his HF Plus Discovery, and he's got his Flex Radio 6600. Now he's got his antenna coming into a splitter. Now there's a little bit loss in that splitter, but it's equal loss, and it's a side-by-side comparison, so it's the same antenna. So then he runs that through his radios into a WSJT-X, and these are the spots that he's got, and this is actually the summary. So with 3 days running, you can see that he's got 900 more spots with the Airspy as opposed to the his Flex 6600. If he looks at the unique spots, you can see that there's 22 more unique spots over that time frame of the 3 days, and then you've got an average signal to noise ratio. So you can see that the Airspy was 2 dB better than the Flex 6600. Now this is real empirical data. This is not somebody just looking at them saying, well, I think this is better than that because it costs more expensive, because it's more expensive. That is simply not the case. And this is really what piqued my interest. Now, Airspy actually had SDRPlay actually had a deal going on at Christmas for folks here in the UK, and it was a deal that I just couldn't miss. So I actually bought an RSP DX R2, and this is a fantastic SDR as well. Now, Roland actually did the comparison on this. So he borrowed an RSP DX, and he did exactly the same again. So you can see his block diagram here. So he's got a splitter, the two SDRs into SDR Console, into the computer. And these SDRs were incredibly close. If you look at these, look at them. The graphs speak for themselves. And if you look at the spots, so if we look at 10 meters, the average signal to noise ratio is exactly the same. If you look at the total spots over the time frame, there is extremely little in it. The uniques, there's only 4 uniques different between the Airspy and the RSPDX. He then splits that by DX as well, because that's what he concentrates on. Now, Roland actually has his own, he's created his own visuals and his own, what would I call that, front end that links to Whisper databases. I'll link that down too, so you can actually do these comparisons for yourself, and I've actually done those too. So he's able to filter by the distance, and you can see that the differences are next to nothing. He's then done 15 meters, he's then done 20 meters, he's then done 40 meters, and if we look down on 40 meters, again, he's done 2 complete days on 40 meters, and you could see that the difference is absolutely minimal. So you can actually decide which radio that you want. There's pluses and minuses for both. The SDRPlay, I think, covers up to about 2 gig, where the Airspy only covers up to about 200 megahertz. So it's up to you what you buy for your use. I'm glad that I've actually now got both. If we go back to SDR Console, you can see where I'm actually pointing to up here. The Airspy actually sets the peak signal to noise ratio. That's the one great thing that makes it kind of idiot proof. The RSPDX doesn't do that. You need to peak the signal to noise ratio yourself, so you just need to be aware of that. But once you've done that, there's really next to no difference in between them. I spoke about SDR Console. So this is the software that you can download to use it. What other things do we need? We spoke about the VoiceMeeter. You don't really need that. But what you do need is you need a way of actually getting the audio. Oh, put that back to mute. You need a way of taking the audio from SDR Console and putting it into your computer so you can actually hear it. So there's actually another piece of software, I think it's like virtual audio cable, and this is a software that you need to purchase. I think it's about $30, £30, and you can actually set up virtual audio cables. So I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of what you can actually do with SDR Console, but you can actually have multiple receivers actually set up. So you could have multiple virtual audio cables, taking it into multiple instances, for example, of WSJT. There is a little bit to it, and there's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's not that difficult. And I've actually used, at the times when I've thought my brain's not been working, I've used ChatGPT, and with a couple of prompts, it's allowed me to do it. Now that I have this running, I never need to think about it. As I said, it's about 15 seconds, and I have it up and running. It runs absolutely flawlessly. The sync between N2EME and SDR Console, and I just find it an absolutely beautiful setup. The fact that I know that I'm getting top-notch performance for not a lot of money. Again, a £200 receiver, your SDR switch, another £140, £150. There's £350. Your radio, you could use what we would call a legacy radio. Roland uses an FT450 from Yaesu when he goes out portable. So that is an old radio and a relatively cheap radio in ham radio speak. So you don't need to be going out and spending £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 on a top of the line radio. You know, I think the data speaks for itself. I know that some of you, as I said, are going to challenge me on that and say, well, that's a lot of nonsense. Well, that's maybe because you've already spent that money on your flagship radio. That's up to you. I completely respect that. I'm never going to move away completely from standalone rigs. I like to work portable, so I'm going to take my standalone rig and I'm going to use my standalone rig, all right? So I'm not belittling it in any way, but doing what I've done here in my home shack, I've been able to optimize my receive by a long ways. And because this system is so modular, I can simply take bits in and out. If you actually look at a top-end radio, what are you actually getting with a top-end radio? When you look at the back panel, you can see that you've got much more options to add multiple antennas, which is the kind of the main thing. And you can't do that on lower end radios. Even if you look at like the Yaesu FTDX10 or the 710, amazing receivers, but you've only got one antenna on it. And that can be a bit of a downfall. You don't have two receivers. Talking of two receivers, there is a way that you can have this setup that I've got here. You can actually have two of the SDR switches. You can have two instances of SDR Console, two SDR receivers, and then you can have diversity receive. You can use your virtual audio cable. You can have one antenna in one ear, one antenna in another ear, and you could be transmitting on one of those two antennas. So I don't see how you're actually at any real disadvantage by going with this hybrid setup, as we call it. And as time goes on, and as I get a little bit of spare cash, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to buy another SDR switch down the line, and then I'm going to run my RSPDX and my Airspy. So I'm going to have, say, a vertical on one ear, I'm going to have the doublet on the other ear, and I'm going to transmit on one or two of those antennas. So again, you're not really at any disadvantage. Airspy is actually coming out with another radio. I can't remember exactly what it's called. Is it the Persis? Not the Persis, that's another radio. It'll come to me in time. The Airspy Ranger, okay? So this is another Airspy that's coming out, and I'm not sure exactly when. So the samples have been produced, so this will actually go from DC to 2.6 gig. So this is going to be a competitor to the SDRPlay's RSPDX. So it's now being optimized for production. So I'm really looking forward to this to see if it actually will beat the Airspy HF Plus Discovery. So we really quite look forward to that. So I actually had a list here, guys, with some of the main points. It's not really an in-depth video, this, to say exactly how to do it. If you leave a comment down in the descriptions, if there's anything, you have any questions, I'll try and do my best to answer them. If you want to see something a bit more in depth of this, I can also consider that as well. So on my Kenwood 590, I don't have the VGS1, which is the voice guide. So I'm actually using N2EME. So I've got WAV files going into that. I put them into my VoiceMeeter software. I then put them back into the radio. So I've actually got a built-in voice keyer through N2EME. So again, that's just another feature that I've been able to do. So you're not at any disadvantage, guys. So I really hope that some of you are actually going to actually have a look at this. What I've not actually shown, guys. So this is actually my comparison that I did. So this is actually over a 9-hour period. So the red line is my Airspy and the green line is my 590. And you can see that the Airspy actually heard a lot more stations. This is stations at least 3,000 kilometers away. And if we look at the table, so we've got the test station, which is the Airspy, we've got the reference station, which is the 590, and you can see that there's a big difference in stations that actually heard. That's just because it's an older radio. So I like to look at the unique spots, so you can see that the Airspy heard 62 unique spots, unique stations. The reference station was 41, so there's a big difference in what the Airspy heard versus what the TS590. And if you actually look at the signal to noise, difference, so I like, it's good how he's got the, Roland's actually put in the average and the median, and you can see that they're reasonably close. So 3.65 versus 4 dB. So there's half an S unit better that the Airspy is over the TS590. And if you look at the SNR difference for the unique spots, it's almost 2 dB in the median. Wow, 2.6. So that's my data. Your trials may vary. So what I would say is actually try and do this for yourself. When I've actually got both instances of WSJTX running, this is what you typically see. So here is a VK station which I have received, and you could see on the 590 I've received them at minus 19 dB. Now if you actually look at them on the Airspy at minus 16, so there you go, there's the raw data to say that the Airspy was actually 3 dB better over the 590. Selectivity with, kind of summing up here, the selectivity with the Airspy is absolutely incredible. And I actually just put a little clip in here, and I just want you to have a little listen to this. You could see how I just narrowed those filter widths and I just completely cut out that station. The selectivity is absolutely incredible. Again, so don't think that you're at any disadvantage with using this little box. It's just amazing what, and this is getting off for 5 years old, this Airspy. Just absolutely incredible, guys. So I really can't sing it praises anymore. Right, I'm starting to go on and on here, guys. So if you've got any questions, please leave them down in the comments. And I'm going to thoroughly enjoy the setup, and I hope you guys are actually going to give it a go too. 73 guys, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.